Hey everyone, I want to show you something really fast. I'm going to show you all the paintings that I've been working on lately, little postcards, but I have a special treat for you actually today. It's a guest artist, and I ran into her at an art festival here in Columbia, South Carolina. Her name is Jen Carmiel, and she paints the most whimsical little flowers and tuxedo cats. She has a tuxedo cat, and she is going to paint a start-finish tutorial with us today, and then next week she will finish that painting on her channel. So stay tuned for that in this video. That's coming up, but real fast, I'm just going to show you some of the things I've been working on. I'm doing a new project. I want to explore new subjects. I am a dreamy but realistic animal painter, and that is what most of my tutorials are about, but I love gardening. I have a garden channel, in fact, Garden for Parker. Check it out. I've been uploading new things lately, including a trick that I use to get the fungus in my soil really healthy. Yes, that's a big thing in the gardening world right now. But anyway, do you want to see what I've been working on? So many things I'm excited about. It's the beginning of a butterfly painting. It's not done. And flowers, because I love flowers, and I get tons of flowers and butterfly visitors every summer. So I just love painting these subjects. But I'm not a flower and butterfly painter, but maybe I want to be. So I'm starting small with these little postcard projects. And I'm going to start a postcard challenge on my Facebook group. So be sure to join my Facebook group for free, where you can upload your art. And I'm going to start a new challenge on my Facebook group, which is totally free to join. Be sure to join my Patreon for free as well, where you can keep in touch with all my new paintings, all my new postcards, and my new animal paintings. There's a lot of those coming out too. Lots of cats lately. So come join the Facebook challenge. And these are great opportunities to try new subjects, new techniques, with very little investment because it's just a small piece of paper. This is probably my favorite one. I love that. I don't know if it's done. I think I'm going to add some line and ink to it, but that's probably my least favorite one. And I'm trying to do like a few really super beginner ones too, so I can make tutorials out of some of these for more beginner students. So if you're interested in any of those as tutorials, leave a comment below. But let's get to the good stuff. This week, the good stuff is a guest artist, Jen Carmiel, and I love the painting she's about to share. So let's jump right into it.
We've got paper and paint, and today I'm going to walk you through a really fun, loose, creative watercolor portrait of a kitty cat and some tulips. Let's go over the materials first. So we've got this Arches 140-pound cold press paper, which I cut down to size with a straight edge cutter, and we also have Sennelier watercolor paints. So I have these Sennelier paint tubes that I squeeze out and pour the paint into the top of this watercolor paint holder. I then hydrate the paint while it is still wet. I love this because you get a very potent and strong saturated color, though it does still work if you hydrate it while it's already dry on the palette. Two paintbrushes, a round and a quill. This is an 8 round by Master Touch, and this is a 4 quill by Master Touch. I use the smaller round to do all of the detail work, and honestly much of the painting, about 80% of the painting, will be done with this brush, and any large washes of color such as skies or grass will be done with the quill. When we get started in painting, you'll notice that I use this paintbrush and a pink color to do all of the little sketch work. This is optional. You're welcome to use a regular pencil and then grab an eraser to get a lot of the graphite off, but you can still kind of see the guidelines for your cat. This can sometimes make people feel a little bit more comfortable with going into the painting, but what I find is I love doing the sketching with the paintbrush. It offers this warm glow to the painting that would not otherwise be there. And those little moments where your line is a little bit too far out, a little bit too far in, a little bit messy, I love those messy moments because it lends to this like fun, creative flow of the piece. Be okay with a little bit of messiness. This is my motto when it comes to painting. You will also want to get a paper towel or a tissue to pick up any paint that you don't want there. You will notice as I paint, if I ever do something I don't entirely like, you have the option to just pick it right back up off the page, and this should also lend to some comfort level for you to be okay with making a few mistakes, because your paper towel can get them right back up. Alrighty, so it's time to paint some cats. I don't know about you, but I'm a cat girly, so let's get going. I've got my watercolors here. So if you're starting with a painted sketch like I am, you're gonna start with this rose color. Any pink cute color will do. Really water this color down so that it's almost entirely transparent. You want just enough paint to be able to see what you're doing, but not too much that it will leave any lasting effects. As you progress through the sketch, you'll see that we start to darken the areas we get comfortable in, but until we know how we want our kitty cat to look, we're gonna leave it as light as possible. I created a kind of guide for you on the left so you can see which step I'm at, but honestly, any which way you wanna draw this kitty cat, it's totally your prerogative. This is your cat, this is your world. The best thing about painting is it is literally just anything you want it to be. I want to encourage you to let go of the fear of making the wrong line. If you make a line you don't like, you can pick it right back up with your paper towel. And even if these lines do create a little bit of a lasting effect on the page, me personally, I find that it adds to the charm. And I mean, while we're sketching away together, since we're now cool best friends, of course, I figure now's a good time to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Jen Carmiel. I'm a watercolor artist and illustrator based right here in Columbia, South Carolina. I paint the small joys in life, and I run this really cool thing called the Small Joys Club, where I mail you an art print and a letter every single month to help remind you of the small joys. There's a link in the description to join, as well as to my website, if you happen to want to collect a little art print or two. I don't know, who's to say? So while I'm sketching, I let myself be as free as possible, and then once I start to see, okay, this is definitely the line that I want here, that is where I deposit just a little bit more color. And I don't even redraw the line because the water has the line's quality in it. By touching just a little bit of pigment into the water that's already on the page, it creates this really pretty gradient that spreads throughout the rest of the lines that you've already been drawing. Alrighty, sketch is pretty much nice and solid. So what I'm gonna do now is fill in the black of the tuxedo cat. So I'm going to take this nice rose color and I'm going to fill in everywhere I see black. Or, you know, I have my own tuxedo cat at home, so I'm gonna also fill in a pattern that more closely matches my own cat. You're welcome to like do the same, personalize your cat as much as you so desire. But you'll notice throughout this painting, we are going to layer some really yummy fun colors to get this nice rich black color at the end. The black that I achieve is using the colors Rose Permanent, Orange, and Blue Primary from the Sennelier watercolors. If you are using different watercolors, what I recommend you do is find the closest possible color you can and maybe test it out. So before you fill in your cat, grab another sheet of paper and try to layer the colors just to see what it'll look like at the end. The good thing is because we're working with a dark color like this black, you're able to really use some experimentation that if it's not quite the color that you want that's coming out, you can add more colors in to correct for the color that you're seeing. You'll want to keep in mind that complementary colors is what makes it darker. So what's really working for the palette that I chose is this orange and this primary blue, and this pink color underneath is going to provide the glow. There's something in painting called unified palettes where you can take one color and add a little bit of it to every single color you use colors in the painting, that's essentially what we're doing with this rose pink color. Every color that goes into this painting is going to be touched with just a little bit of pink somehow, some way. So in conclusion, test your black first if you so desire, but I am achieving mine by layering Rose Permanent 690, Orange 645, and Blue Primary 326. Alrighty then, so we have our pink filled in everywhere we want our black to be. So now we're going to add in orange. While it is still wet, it is key that it is still wet. At least that's my personal big preference. So while the paint is wet, we're adding in our orange. What I do is I grab some orange as much as I can, and I just sort of touch inside the pink to deposit that color. You can use the brush on top to push the color around. While we're adding color, it's important to consider what kind of paper you're using. If you're using a higher quality paper, this might not matter as much, but if you're using one of the lower qualities, you might start to notice the paper starting to crumple a little bit or buckle. That's why the paper you choose is the most important part of your watercolor painting. And learning to practice on this higher quality paper will be a game changer for you in your artwork. So while we're adding this color, I want to make sure there's not too much water. I want there to just be pigment. So while I look at this page, I see a little bit of shine because it is wet, but I don't want to see a bubble of water leaning on top, because as you know, if water sits on top of the paper, you'll start to see a little bit of a bubble, like a puddle. I don't want puddling, but I do want pigment. So add as much orange as you can there without too much water. If you've by accident added too much water, you can grab your paper towel and just barely touch the top of where your paint is. Not pushing it onto the paper, but like slowly lowering the paper towel until it's just close enough to soak up the water itself. My orange is going to cover up all of the pink, so now it just looks like an orange kitty. And once our orange is all filled up, we are going to put in the blue, my favorite part. This is where the black just really comes together. So I'm going to grab as much blue as I can, and I'm going to start at the very edge. So where we deposit this blue is going to matter a lot, right? Because one of my favorite parts about painting tuxedo cats is this beautiful gradient that you get by mixing these colors while they're still wet. I don't want to be one big flat black color. I want it to be a gradient of black to orange to pinks. I want enough variation there. So what I'm going to do to achieve that is I'm adding my blue to the edges first, and then as I move over to the center, I might grab a little bit more pink or maybe a little bit more orange, and then I get a little bit creative about mixing this blue to pink to orange all throughout inside the kitty cat. So my edges are going to be that dark blue, but the middle can fluctuate in color. And then at the end, when you take a step back, all you notice is a beautiful atmosphere. You can also notice as I paint, I might pick up some color if I notice that there's too much water, because like I mentioned, I don't want that bubble, because if we leave that bubble on top, it'll dry with this weird consistency. I don't want any sort of weird consistency. I want a nice flat gradient. So if at any point there's too much water, feel free to just pick it right back up with your paper towel. As we are completing our cat, you'll notice that the darkest parts are the very back, all the way up to the tail, the face, and where the hands are. You'll notice that the gradient gets a little bit lighter inside where the tummy is, and that's what I love so much about painting these cute little tuxedo cats. You can really have a lot of fun with how color plays on the surface. You don't have to just be, oh, it's one color, it's just a black coat, we'll just make it one flat black color. No, you don't have to. You can make it a very rich, beautiful, dark color that has a lot of different colors inside of it. Alrighty, we've made it, folks. The cat is pretty much done, I think. It's so hard to say, you know, Picasso once said, art is never finished, only abandoned. Or Leonardo da Vinci, I don't know. Finishing paintings is hard. That's the point. We're gonna start with our tulips now. So I'm going to create a guide. Again, we're going back to that very, very, very light rose color, watering it down as much as we possibly can. We want almost transparent paint with a little bit of a pink hue. Make sure your brush is completely clean of that black color you used to be using so that it's not dingy at all. I actually poured my pink into a new container so that it's that pure pink color again. And then I'm going to create some little guidelines where I want these tulips to be. So I'm going to create some little dots across to kind of like give my eye, like, where am I going to place these tulips? This is sort of you planning out, sketching out where these tulips are going to go. And then once I'm happy with my dots, and I say those are some handsome looking dots, now we are going to create the tulips. And I'm going to do that with 3 ovals. So just 3 little wompity womps, 3 little wompity womp ovals, and that's going to be where your tulip is. Be as creative and fun and free with these little squiggles as you can, because we are going to create these tulips with layers, like several different dried layers of paint that build up to create the petals of the tulip. It's okay if it's not perfect. What I like to say is it only needs to have spirit. Next, we are going to do the stems. So we're going to leave our tulips just like that, just as little squiggles for now. You're not going to fill them in yet. What we're going to do is we're going to create the stems now. You can use a pre-mixed green from a tube if you'd like, or you can mix your own. Whatever kind of green you use, I do recommend mixing in just a teeny tiny bit of that rose color to kind of dirty it up a little bit and get it into a little bit more of a unified palette with the rest of the painting. The more rose color you can kind of add to any color you put on this painting, the more it'll sort of ring of this togetherness, which is one of those really cozy feelings you get when you look at paintings, right? So to paint these stems, it's combined with 2 kinds of lines. I have this vertical line that is a little bit slanted and squiggly, as well as the leaf line, which is more of a upside down C shape that goes towards the kitty cat. So these stems are created with the same freeness as the tulip flower. I'm really just doing all these curvy little lines. One thing that I personally do when I paint is I try to paint like the impression of whatever I'm doing, something that gives you this fun, free, creative feeling when you look at it. Because what happens with your eye is when you take a step back, your brain and imagination will fill in the little details. So I don't need to paint the little details. That's my personal philosophy. I just need to paint something with the spirit of whatever I'm painting. So for me, that's a lot of really fun, creative, and free lines that go in the general direction as what I'm painting. When your leaf and stem lines are all done, we are going to create the sketch for the background now, using that same very pale pink color. So I'm going to create a couple lines for the lines in the sidewalk. In order to make a straight line, you'll want to move only your arm, not your wrist, because when you move your wrist, you create this circular motion because of just the way that hands and wrists work. Or if you like wobbly lines, you know, that's up to you. This is your painting, this is your world. I got the line for the house right here. As you can notice, I kind of made it a little wobbly. If I wanted it to be straight, like I just told you, I would move the paper diagonally so I can get a nice straight line with just my arm. But I actually don't mind it all that much. So I'm going to draw the rest of the lines for the panes against the house that's up here in the foreground. And then I'm going to fill in my grass with watercolor paint because it is transparent. You always want to start with the lightest color possible. So even though I might want to get to a darker green later on in the painting, I want to start light. So I'm starting with a light yellowy green. And then once I have all these shapes where I want them, I can start depositing a darker green or a blue inside of that yellow. when I'm painting around my cat, I want to make sure I do not touch my cat. That is the thing. If your watercolor paint touches another area of wet paint, that paint will spread. I leave just a little sliver of plain paper that does not get wet with paint because I don't want my colors to bleed into each other. So once I have the shapes that I like for my grass, it can be just a regular flat color for the grass. For me, I did some nice kind of bushy motions just because, just because I felt like it. And you know what? When you paint, because you felt like it is a good enough answer. Adding just a little bit of this pinky orange color to give it a little bit more dimension in the color of the grass. So as I'm coloring in this grass, I am liking this kind of yellow-green, so I'm going to keep it on that yellow-green side for now. And then I'm going to grab kind of an orangish color, so a little orangey pink. Again, that pink's going to be prominent in almost every single color that we put on here. And I'm going to grab a little orangey pink and I'm going to fill in the panes of the house. I'm keeping a little bit of white in between those panes because for me, I really like shape when I paint, so I'm just leaving these rectangular shapes because I just really love how that looks. After the house, we're moving to the concrete in the foreground. I'm using a Payne's Gray 703 in order to paint this foreground. I'm adding a little bit of that pink. You know, at this point, we're a broken record about the pink. What can I say? And I'm just coloring in that foreground. Again, not touching my kitty cat, being very, very careful about my kitty cat. And I deposit the most amount of color at the edges of the painting. For the most part, I want a nice, clean gradient. I don't want anything too messy or distracting because I want the eye to be on my cat. I don't want the eye to be in the foreground. So you can kind of control where the viewer looks depending on the treatment of the surface. So in order to get that eye over to the kitty cat, I leave my foreground nice and plain, nice and simple. This is one of my favorite moments. You can really play with negative space. So negative space is the paper that you don't touch between the shapes that you put down. So as I'm drawing this line right underneath to show you where the crack in the sidewalk is, you see that white stripe of untouched paper? That is the negative space. So by creating shapes that are in high contrast to one another, like very straight lines next to each other, you can activate that negative space and it just makes it look really cool and really nice to look at. I'm going to darken up my corners here. So right where that line is, I want to draw a little bit more attention to it. So I'll darken up where those corners go. To make the color darker, I'm using a little bit of this rose color and a little bit of the Payne's Gray. I start to move the grass up beneath where the tulips are. And then I deposit a little bit more color and define those lines just a little bit more. I personally really like contrast in painting, so I always like to make sure on one side of the shape it's one color, on the other side it's a lighter color. That way there's a little bit of visual interest and fun happening. At this point, your painting is really starting to come together, and I'm loving it. It's so much fun. We're gonna fill in the tulips now. I'm going to grab the lightest possible pink color that I can for these tulips, and I'm going to deposit that color right on top of those lines that I drew. You might see the lines start to come up a little bit, and that's okay. It will all come together in the end, as they say. So I'm depositing this very light pink color. The reason why we don't want to go too dark is because if we go too dark now, there is nowhere for us to go later. So we want to start light and keep it light. I'm depositing just a little bit of orange into that pink that I just put on there, and I try to get those nice shapes. I kind of make some polka dotty kind of stuff in between the flowers to give the impression that it's like a full bush. And then I fill in just a little bit more of those white spaces with a green color for the stems. I'm kind of creating this image, right, with bunches and bunches of impressionable shapes that when you take a step back and look at this painting, it all comes together and makes sense. But as we're putting it together, it's kind of like a puzzle, putting all these different shapes together in aesthetically pleasing ways. I hope you don't mind a little art history tangent here, but modernism, which is an art movement in like the early 20th century, which was all about fascination with shape and line and color and all the individual moments of an art piece. Because you see, art is like the skill of being able to paint something that looks like real life, right? to the fullest extent of that skill, we would call that illusionism, sort of like you're looking through a window into another world. But modernism is different because modernism is not a focus on that skill of making something look exactly like real life, but instead a fascination with the material of paint. And modernism greatly influences the kind of art style that I personally have because I just have a lot of fun with making all these fun curvy little lines, fun cute colors. Like, I just have a really good time with how all of these shapes, colors, and lines come together. So whenever you're painting, you can kind of ask yourself, where does the joy in painting lie for you? Is it in the mark making with all the lines and the colors? Or is it in the challenge and the skill of making something look just like real life? Artists come in all shapes and sizes, so they say, and with every single painting you make, you get to know yourself just a little bit better. At this point, we're going to let our painting dry so that we can later add the sky and several different layers to our tulips. So at this point, we can take a little bit of a break and come back to it later. But this is what it looks like after the first paint through. So now we're gonna go ahead and wait before adding some final details towards the end. The final details part goes a lot faster. All you're going to do is add some spunkiness, so some extra layers to your flowers, some extra layers to your stems. And that's pretty much all it'll need to be. So we'll go ahead and let that dry, come back a little bit later and see how it's going.
All right, be sure to go check out Jen Carmiel's channel. I will link that in the comments and the description below. And I will also link my Facebook group and my Patreon, where you can also join there for free, where you can join my art community, and we have a lot of fun. So I hope to see you there. And until next time, go watercolor your world. Bye, everybody.